Hello book fans, today I'm going to be reviewing Ken Follett's The Pillars of Earth. Now this is the book that Ken Follett says is going to go down on his tomb. It's his legacy, it's his dream book that he spent years and years of his life composing. It's basically about building a cathedral and all the characters involved in that. However, if you're going to read a book about a cathedral, this is the one to read. Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo. That's the best one, and it's only 423 pages, but it's small writing. See, small writing. But this one is 1,000, so slightly bigger writing. So I don't know. I think this one is probably longer, and I don't know. It certainly felt longer reading it. And yes, books about cathedrals. Now it takes into account all. Now it takes a long time to build this cathedral. You're talking, it can take 50 years, I don't know, it can take a long time to build a cathedral. It takes tens of years, and it's kind of a lifetime kind of scenario. But the thing is, the way the book works is, I got about 50% through it, and I started thinking, is this really the book for me? I'm not sure, because it's got excellent characters, characterization is brilliant, and the story is an excellent story as well. However, the plot is where it fails for me. And I started getting to this point thinking, shall I carry on? But I carried on. I got to this point and thinking, I really shouldn't have carried on. So I carried on till the end to see this thing through, basically. And there's a few flaws in it. Now, if we talk about the plot, the idea is you start off with Tom the Builder. He's a guy who has this idea, this dream of a cathedral, of building a cathedral at all costs. And it's a fictional kind of story, but with some realistic historical events that occur within it, like Thomas Becket and all that, which is nailed in. Which is the Thomas Becket bit is ridiculous at the end, but by then I've already kind of given up. Yes, I didn't skip any of it though. I read through all of it. And I should have skipped some of it. And yeah, this guy wants to build a cathedral at all costs. He wants to build the best cathedral possible, and his whole family are involved in building this cathedral and see it through to the end. Ultimately, it does end. The cathedral does get built. That's a spoiler, but it's kind of implied in the introduction anyway. But you've also got some other characters like the monk who essentially oversees the whole building as well. So there's a few prime characters. The monk Philip, who becomes like he's overseeing it all and heavily involved. Now the monk, he's a really pious guy, but he kind of shoots himself in the foot by being too nice and assuming people are going to be nice and assuming that God is going to save him, and God never does. God always screws him over, basically. So I don't know. Maybe it's written from an atheist perspective, or maybe not. Look, yeah, I don't know. Thomas the Becket certainly didn't have a good time. But I mean, what was the weaknesses as well? So, by the way, I say weakness in plot is because you have the good guys. So you've got the monk, you've got Tom the Builder, you've got his family, you've got other people. You've got a couple of strong female characters, but there's heavily sexualized in it. It's written in 1989, so you can tell kind of why. They're a bit more sexist back then. But they do have strong character. They are strong and deterministic of their own kind of futures. So there is positives to be taken away from the female characters. However, there is a big negative narrative with the females. But the main problem I had was the baddies. Like, you had William, and he's the kind of earl and that who gets in the way of the construction of this thing, and he's the kind of main baddie. You've got another baddie who will become obvious in the church, and mainly it's William. And my problem with it is that he is just an ultimate baddie. He's like a devil, and he is indestructible. He shows up at the most opportune of purpose to destroy the good work of the good people in this book. And he does it again and again and again and again. He never gets thwarted. He just exists as a work of God, really, a work of, he's like a natural phenomenon in the world. And I just don't buy it. I think it's bullshit. It's nonsense, basically. I kind of started to disconnect the more and more this occurred, especially by the third time. It's second or third time. It's like, no. So that's the plot, really. The plot is, you have the good person build something, Bad person come, smash it down. Good person, build, smash it down, build. And there's reiterations of the building and smashing down. And I get it, it's kind of a metaphor for life and that, but it's really, really boring and predictable. And you get just sick of it and you groan. Another thing, another aspect that occurs, a scene I suppose, in this book, which is really tedious and at first quite shocking, as in horrifically shocking really, the amount of detail he goes into. But it's William, the ultra baddie. He also really loves rape, so he rapes an innocent girl, a virgin, and it really goes into heavy detail about the Heimlich, the penetration. The thing is, the amount of detail Ken goes into with this really sexualizes the scene. I'm thinking, is it some kind of rape porn or something? Is that the intention? Is he trying to, because it just seems very sexual and as well as being awful at the same time, and you're thinking, what is the audience that is going to be reading this in 1989 that he's aiming at? I mean, but not only that, okay, so he does it the first time. I mean, I want to say it's fair enough, but the detail is really not fair. It's really horrific, which it should be, but it shouldn't be detailed in this particular way. I'm not going to read a chapter out to you because I don't know who's listening to it. But then he does it again and again. A number of times he goes through the same scene with different people getting raped and raped and raped. But not only that, it's often gang rape, with his knights will also be doing it as well. And it's all in that heavy detail, very sexualized. And it happens to every female character, not the rape, but the sexualization of the character, where they talk about the breasts and they have to, they all have a sex scene. So there's a lot of sex scenes. It's very sexy, which I'm not against. I'm not against that. And it's fair, it's fine. The sex scenes. There's nothing wrong with the general sex scenes. It's just unneeded, really, and it doesn't make sense. Like early on, there's a sex scene where one of the characters loses their wife who's dead. Within 12 hours, he's having sex with a nymph, a wood nymph, but a lady of the woods. And you just think, why? And it really goes into good description. It's a very good sex scene, don't get me wrong. If you're into sexy books, that's a good scene. Not the rape ones, but that's a good one. But he's just lost his wife. And he is remorseful, he's sad about losing his wife, but he also wants to have sex. And while I'm not in doubt that there is somebody on this earth where it's happened to, I just think in the context of a story, it's not something that I want, not something that I believe in, not in that kind of time scale. So it's just too sexy in stages. But the redeeming parts of the book is the characters. There's some very positive things about the characters, not all the negative. Like William the baddie is a terrible character. He's really one-dimensional. He's just like the baddie out of any kind of one-dimensional baddie. He's terrible. He's boring, and yeah, you're going to get disappointed when he does get his comeuppance. That's really disappointing. That's a missed opportunity. Like I could go into detail with this, but I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to add spoilers in case you have to read it for school. Why would the schools make you read this crap, really? But yeah, the redeeming parts of the characters is that they have some real positivity about them, and some of them really work hard and get results. And you see them developing from being children into adults as well, and see the implications of that. And you get relationships developing. One of them is believable but also frustrating as well, because it's absolutely ridiculous. There's so many ridiculous things. My problem is, a lot of the relationships that develop in the book, the way they unravel is entirely about the plot, about forcing a certain way. Well, this will make a really good story if this character goes away across to the other end of the earth and his love is left in the UK, all sad. It just happens there's no good reason. I mean, there are good reasons, but that isn't one, and none of them are good reasons. They're just there to serve the plot, and for that reason, it's not really a recommended book. And I mean, it's well written, as in, he's very good writer. He's a very good writer. He just needed someone to do some really heavy editing, had a lot of input in the initial stages before he went down certain rabbit holes that really did not work. because I think it could have been a phenomenal book, and I think it would have been a classic, an essential read, if it had not had such a terrible plot that it really doesn't work. I mean, it's not a million terrible, but I'd say this book starts out as a 5 out of 5 experience somewhere in here, and it also has some really good, and I'd argue probably better even than Victor Hugo's The Building of Notre Dame. There's some better, cathedral building aspects in here with the kind of detail Ken goes into. So that is good. That is a real positive, but it's just not enough. And he should have focused more on that. So we started off at 5 stars. We got down to 2 to 3 stars, and somewhere in here there's like 1 out of 5 huge chapters that just get eradicated in your belief in Ken Follett as a serious writer. So it's overall, I've got to be fair, I'd say it's a 3 out of 5 experience. But if this doesn't sound like your kind of book, you know what to do. Just don't pick it up from that church when it's free and do it at the book swap. Basically pick something else up. Yes, so drop a like if you found this useful. If you've got any questions about the book, ask me now before I forget about it. Another year's time I may have forgot the whole thing and about what I hated about it. I'll put it into Goodreads, probably a more thorough kind of review of it with some spoilers. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have an excellent day. Drop a like.